Most traders don't lose money because they don't understand charts or indicators or market structure. They lose because their thinking becomes crowded at the exact moment clarity is required. A behavioral finance report once revealed that more than two-thirds of retail traders enter trades they had already decided not to take. Not because the setup suddenly improved, but because their internal state shifted. That statistic isn't about poor strategy. It's about mental noise. It's about what happens when too many thoughts compete for control at the same time. Chaos thinking doesn't arrive as panic. It arrives quietly. It feels like urgency mixed with hesitation. It feels like checking one more time frame, even though you already know the answer. It feels like reacting to information that doesn't truly matter. And by the time you realize it's happening, your decision-making process has already been compromised. If trading psychology matters to you, and if you want to learn how clarity is built rather than hoped for, subscribe to Mind for Trade. Because trading accuracy begins in the mind long before it shows up in results. Ahmed didn't start trading recklessly. In fact, he started with discipline. His notebook was clean. His rules were written clearly. He knew exactly how much he was willing to risk and exactly what conditions justified an entry. The night before trading, he reviewed his levels calmly, visualizing patience and execution. He told himself he would wait. He always told himself that. The problem wasn't preparation. The problem was the moment the market opened. As the session began, price moved slightly faster than expected. Nothing dramatic. Just enough movement to trigger attention. Ahmed leaned forward in his chair without realizing it. His breathing became shallower. His eyes locked onto the screen, as if focus alone could control the outcome. He reminded himself that he had time, but his body didn't believe him. Price approached his level, hesitated, and pulled back slightly. Ahmed checked another time frame, then another. Each view showed something slightly different, not enough to invalidate the idea, but enough to introduce doubt. His mind began filling the gaps with questions. What if this is the move, and I miss it? What if waiting is actually the mistake? What if everyone else sees something I don't? A notification flashed on his phone. Someone mentioned volatility. Another trader posted a chart with confidence. Ahmed didn't even realize how much weight those moments carried. His heart rate increased. His jaw tightened. The silence in the room felt louder than before. He entered early. Not impulsively, not recklessly, but subtly, just a little earlier than planned. Just enough to feel safe. The market paused. One candle closed against him. That's when the internal noise surged. He zoomed in again, trying to read meaning into every tick. His stop loss suddenly felt too far away. Remembered the last losing trade, the frustration, the self-criticism, the feeling of being wrong. His hand moved almost automatically. He adjusted the stop, just slightly, not because the plan demanded it, but because his mind wanted relief. The market dipped once more. He was stopped out. The room went quiet. No anger, no outburst, just a heavy stillness. Ahmed stared at the screen, as if it might explain itself. Minutes later, price moved exactly as anticipated. Cleanly, effortlessly, almost indifferently. That moment hurt more than a loss. It felt personal. Not because the market did something wrong, but because he knew he did. And he couldn't understand why it kept happening. He leaned back, closed his eyes, and felt the exhaustion settle in. Not physical exhaustion, mental fatigue. The kind that builds slowly over weeks of internal conflict. The kind that comes from knowing what to do and still not doing it. This is the cost of chaos thinking that no one warns you about. It's not just financial, it's cognitive. It drains confidence, trust, and emotional energy. Every trade becomes a negotiation with your own mind. Every decision feels heavier than it should. Chaos thinking isn't a lack of intelligence, it's overload. Too many inputs arriving too quickly for the brain to filter effectively. Charts, news, opinions, past losses, future hopes, fear of missing out, fear of being wrong, all competing for attention at the same time. The brain wasn't designed for this environment. So it shortcuts. It reacts. It seeks certainty where none exists. Fear disguises itself as caution. Urgency disguises itself as intuition. Hope disguises itself as confidence. And clarity, The quiet voice that sees things objectively never gets the chance to speak. Later that evening, Ahmed reviewed the trade calmly. From a distance, everything was obvious. The setup was valid. The level made sense. The entry logic was sound. The exit was emotional. He could see it clearly now. That made it worse. Why could he see it after the fact, but not in the moment? That question stayed with him, because it suggested something deeper than discipline or patience. It suggested that clarity wasn't missing. It was being overridden. Most traders respond to this frustration by adding more structure, more rules, more indicators, more strategies. Ahmed did the same. He watched more videos, downloaded more tools, searched for certainty and complexity. But the more information he added, the louder his thinking became. Now every trade had multiple confirmations and multiple contradictions. He hesitated more. He missed good entries, then chased bad ones. The market began to feel unpredictable, even hostile. But the unpredictability wasn't in price. It was in his internal state. This is the internal war that silently destroys consistency. The battle between logic and emotion, between planning and reacting, between patience and urgency. And the most dangerous part is that the brain adapts to this chaos. Stress becomes familiar. Stillness feels uncomfortable. Silence feels like missed opportunity. So traders create movement where none is needed. They trade to feel engaged. They trade to escape discomfort. Overtrading isn't driven by greed as much as it is driven by mental noise. Ahmed began noticing something unsettling. On days when he traded less, he felt clearer. On days when he traded more, he felt drained. Yet his results didn't improve with effort. More thinking didn't lead to better decisions. Sometimes it made them worse. Late at night, scrolling through his journal, he saw the same pattern repeating across weeks and months. Strong ideas undermined by chaotic execution. Confidence replaced by second-guessing. He stopped blaming the market. He stopped blaming himself. And a new thought formed quietly. What if the problem wasn't emotional control? What if it was mental noise? What if clarity didn't come from trying harder, but from removing interference? What if the traders who looked calm weren't stronger, smarter, or more talented, but simply quieter inside? That thought made him uneasy. Because chaos feels active. It feels productive. Clarity feels exposed. It requires stillness. And stillness feels risky when money is on the line. If this feels uncomfortably familiar, if you've ever watched price move exactly as you planned while you stood frozen or exited early, like this video and comment, clarity. Because once you recognize this pattern, you can't unsee it. And the question that remains isn't about strategy anymore. It's about how long you're willing to trade with a noisy mind before you learn how to think differently. The shift doesn't begin with confidence. It begins with relief. Relief from having to think about everything at once. When traders first hear about AI, they imagine prediction machines, perfect entries, or automated certainty. That expectation alone creates resistance. Because deep down, they know certainty doesn't exist in trading. The real power of AI has nothing to do with knowing the future. It has everything to do with quieting the present. AI doesn't see the market the way a human does. It doesn't feel urgency when price accelerates. It doesn't remember the last loss with emotional weight. It doesn't project hope onto the next candle. It simply observes patterns, compares probabilities, and responds without attachment. Not always right, not perfect, but consistent in one critical way. It doesn't get overwhelmed. And that difference matters more than most traders realize. Chaos thinking is not caused by bad judgment. It's caused by too many signals hitting the brain at once. AI reduces that pressure by acting as a filter, not by telling you what to do, but by narrowing what deserves attention. Sometimes it highlights repetition. Sometimes it exposes behavioral loops. Sometimes it simply slows the process enough for clarity to surface. Ahmed didn't trust this idea at first. He wasn't looking for another tool. He was tired of tools. What he wanted, even if he couldn't articulate it yet, was mental silence. He wanted to trade without the constant internal negotiation. He wanted the noise to stop. He began using AI in the least exciting way possible. Not for entries, not for signals, not for predictions. He used it to observe himself. He fed his past trades into a simple AI-assisted journal. Entry timing, exit timing, emotional state, reason for action. Nothing complex, no optimization, just data. At first, it felt pointless. He already knew he made mistakes. He didn't need a machine to tell him that. But AI doesn't point fingers. It reveals patterns. Quietly. After a few weeks, something uncomfortable became obvious. Most of his losing trades clustered around the same conditions. Early session volatility, social media exposure, slight deviations from plan that felt harmless in the moment. The AI didn't accuse him of being emotional. It simply showed frequency, probability, repetition, and that changed how the information landed. It didn't feel personal, it felt factual. That alone reduced defensiveness. And when defensiveness disappears, learning accelerates. Ahmed noticed something else. His best trades shared a different pattern. Fewer chart adjustments, less screen switching, longer pauses before entry. His body language was different. His breathing was slower. His mind was quieter. AI didn't call this discipline. It just showed correlation. This is where clarity thinking begins to replace chaos thinking. Not through motivation, but through awareness. AI works in probabilities. It doesn't say this will happen. It says this tends to happen under similar conditions. That language matters. It removes pressure. It removes the need to be right. And in trading, the need to be right is one of the loudest sources of noise. Instead of asking, is this trade perfect? Ahmed began asking, does this align with my higher probability behavior? That single reframing reduced urgency. It created space. The next shift was subtle, but powerful. Ahmed stopped reviewing trades emotionally. He let AI handle memory. Humans rewrite memories to protect identity. Losses feel heavier. Wins feel validating. AI doesn't do that. It records what happened, not how it felt. Over time, this separated self-worth from outcomes. Losses became information. Wins became confirmation of process, not ego. Then came the most important change. AI introduced delay. Not forced delay, natural delay. Before entering a trade, Ahmed would quickly check how similar conditions played out historically. Not to predict outcome, but to ground himself. That pause, sometimes just seconds, was enough to interrupt impulsive behavior. And in trading, interruption is everything. Clarity doesn't shout, it waits. The more, Ahmed used AI as a lens rather than a crutch, the quieter his thinking became. He stopped reacting to every candle. He stopped interpreting randomness as meaning. He stopped trying to control the market and started managing his behavior. This didn't make him fearless. It made him neutral. And emotional neutrality is where precision lives. The micro shifts were simple, but cumulative. He reduced inputs instead of adding them. One chart, one time frame, one idea at a time. AI reinforced this simplicity by showing him how complexity correlated with poorer results. The evidence wasn't motivational. It was undeniable. He also began structuring his trading day differently. Not rigidly, intentionally. Fewer decisions, clearer windows. AI helped him identify when his decision quality declined. That awareness alone prevented unnecessary trades. He didn't feel restricted. He felt protected. Gradually, something unfamiliar emerged. Silence, not boredom, not hesitation. Mental quiet. Price could move aggressively without triggering urgency. Missed trades no longer felt like failures. Losses no longer demanded immediate redemption. The internal dialogue that once screamed now whispered. This is the moment chaos thinking loses its grip. Clarity thinking isn't about confidence. It's about alignment. When behavior, probability, and emotional state align, decisions feel obvious. Not easy, obvious. And obvious decisions don't require force. Ahmed didn't become perfect. He became consistent. His equity curve didn't explode. It stabilized. Drawdowns shortened. Emotional recovery time decreased. The wins didn't feel euphoric. The losses didn't feel crushing. Trading became procedural. And that's where the identity shift completed itself. He stopped seeing himself as someone trying to win trades. He started seeing himself as someone managing risk and behavior. The upgraded trader isn't aggressive. They're deliberate. They don't chase volatility. They let volatility come to them. They don't interpret every move as opportunity. They filter. They don't fight emotions. They design systems that reduce emotional load. AI doesn't make this trader special. It makes them stable. Calm becomes the default. Focus becomes automatic. Discipline becomes a byproduct. Results follow quietly. This version of you doesn't need excitement to feel engaged. Silence no longer feels like danger. Waiting feels powerful. Accuracy feels inevitable rather than forced. You stop measuring success by today's outcome and start measuring it by behavioral consistency. This is clarity thinking. Not robotic, not emotionless, emotionally neutral. And once you experience it, chaos thinking becomes intolerable. You stop asking how to predict the market and start asking how to protect your mental bandwidth. You stop searching for certainty and start working with probability. You stop reacting and start observing. That's not a strategy. Shift. That's an identity shift. And identity is what compounds. If you're ready to evolve your trading mind, subscribe Mind for Trade.